Gotham Season 4, Episode 4, The Demon's Head. This is definitely a cool episode. We get to see Ra's al Ghul up and down this episode as he's continuing to go for this knife, and he gets real serious about it this time. He brings in Anubis and whoever that giant person was, and that was interesting for sure. It was like a weird version of Anubis, and it's the Guardian or whatever. I thought that was cool. I definitely like that, and I love the way the story ultimately just played out in general. I thought it was really well done, and we have, Jim kind of doing his thing. He, of course, it starts off, he's just doing a normal mission, and ultimately that results, or the result of that, is he gets officially wrapped up in all the madness that's going on with Ra's al Ghul. Like, he was already doing his thing. It was basically two big stories at once, and it was like, this is the Penguin side of things, this is the super crazy mystical, League of Assassins Ra's al Ghul side of things. And Jim is now officially in both parts of the story now, even though he doesn't exactly believe what's going on, because it starts off, him actually getting any sort of real information. It's crazy, because all the real information is, well, sorry, but this guy actually killed Alfred, the guy who's alive, and then he brought him back to life, which is why he's still alive. So a bunch of crazy stuff hits him all at once towards the end of the episode, and I kind of like this. Like, he's in it, which I thought was kind of funny, because they've dealt with so many people dying, but not really. I was kind of surprised he was, not really believing what they were saying. I was like, I mean, they dealt with a lot of, dead people, from quite a few different situations. I mean, I know most of it has been science-based, but still, real crazy science that no one really would have thought was possible. So it's just like, I mean, at this point, I wouldn't be so skeptical, but he kind of was in the beginning. I'm sure it will come around when he eventually runs into all the madness that comes along with dealing with the League of Assassins. But, things kick off with Bruce and Alfred. They get this knife to this older man and his grandson. And then, of course, that man, as he's inspecting the knife with his grandson late at night, Ra's al Ghul is kind of just strolling through the museum, knocks on the door, nice and calm. And that was the thing about him this whole episode. And I mentioned this before. I was like, Ra's al Ghul is the Demon's Head. He's the leader of the League of Assassins. He's not necessarily immortal, but he lives for a super long time because of the Lazarus Pit, and he knows all sorts of martial arts, and he knows a lot about magic and this and that. He could wipe out all of Gotham pretty much on his own if he kind of wanted to. It would take a lot of time because he is still one man and he can't technically die. But he's a tough dude. That is not a joke dealing with him. And this whole episode, he was just calm. It starts off with the knock on the door, and he's talking with the guy, and it's like, he's picking stuff up, and he's like, oh, this is, I think it was it's something that was supposed to be from the 15th century, and he was like, oh, this is actually made by a forger who actually has really good skills, and it's from the 15th century, or it's from the 17th century instead of the 15th century. And I thought that was cool, and then he talks to the guy, and he asks him about the blade, and of course he's like, I don't know what you're talking about, and he talks about this woman who ran a brothel, who's the best liar that he ever knew, and he's just like, I'm just looking for the blade. The guy, of course, won't tell him, and so he snaps his neck, and he's like, well, couldn't find the blade, and he just takes off. That was it. He just walked away, and his grandson was just kind of left there in this crazy situation. And so, of course, that's what gets Jim involved. We find out that Bullock is taking a bit of a sabbatical, so surprise, surprise, we get to see Harper kind of do her thing in this episode. Very little. I think, considering they brought in Ra's al Ghul as the main component, or at least one half, of this episode, it's it makes sense, even though this is her first time, or us getting to really see her out in the field. She still didn't play the biggest role ever. It was very small. She was in a couple of scenes. But we do get to see her out in the field. Bullock is taking a sabbatical for a few days, which I assume is going to mean at least the next maybe 2 episodes, possibly 2 or 3 episodes. But things kind of continue on, of course. Bruce comes along and is like, well, I was checking up on progress. Now he's dead. Crap, I screwed this up. I got this guy killed. Alfred was, once again, right about not getting certain people involved, which was really funny because he didn't necessarily say we shouldn't get them involved. He was like, it's one thing with this old guy, but this one's a kid. And it was he didn't really care because that guy was like, he's lived long enough. He has a grandson, which means he's lived decades. Who cares? But this guy's really, he hardly lived a decade. And I was like, that's kind of funny, but also sort of effed up. He was like, it's one thing with the old dude, but the kid? So, of course, Alfred was naturally right, and it was super dangerous. And Bruce went along with it anyway because he's like, we need to know why this blade is so important. Unfortunately, they still, don't end up finding out. They just know it's insanely important, and that's pretty much it, especially in this episode, because they knew it was important to begin with. And then it goes to, Ra's is coming after it. He is ready to kill for this blade. And, that's when Bruce gets involved. He tells Jim about Barbara, so they have their little interaction. Not as intense as I thought it was going to be. He was kind of cool about it. It was just like, okay, he didn't really think about the whole dead thing. It was just like, you're back. He instantly went to the whole money deal, which was like, who's bankrolling you? And that, of course, went nowhere for him. And Bruce comes in. So he didn't really screw anything up, but that's when he started to kind of play his hand a little bit to Jim, where he just came right in and was like, is it Ra's al Ghul? And then Barbara was just like, she kind of shut it down. It's like, okay, time to kind of spread the word out and, get things going. So, of course, Jim is mad because he doesn't know what the F is going on. He knows that Bruce knows something, but he's getting like bits and pieces as the story continues. So eventually they end up finding the grandson. He knows where the blade is because he doesn't have it on him. And that's when they officially have to deal with Anubis and, the other guy. And that was a pretty cool sequence. They're going through and I don't know, I guess they just showed up and everybody just freaked out and left the library. I was like, I'm really curious exactly what they did to freak everyone out like that, where they would actually leave. Because all they did was just like walk in. But they have this cool little sequence where they're running through. The kid Alex actually ends up being attacked for a quick second. So it was actually, there was actual tension. Like they didn't just escape and it was just Jim fighting, which is like, well, of course, Jim being attacked is just Jim being attacked. He's the main adult character. So of course he gets in the fights, he lives, that's just Jim. But the kid getting like bit and Bruce getting bit later in the episode, like them just getting attacked continuously, I was like, that actually adds a little bit of tension to it because it changes up the dynamic because it's not just Jim getting into another crazy fight sequence. He was still in one, but other characters were involved, younger characters as well. So I really like the way that they handled that with the actual tension of them being attacked. And then of course things continue on, Jim gets a little bit more information, and then this was probably like the second part where I thought Ra's was super freaking awesome. He just shows up at the GCPD and he's like, hey, I'm Ra's al Ghul, I'm doing this for, ancient, antiquity requisition and stuff for Nana Parbat. And they have this little conversation. Jim tries to utilize that against him, where he's, talking about the blade. And they're kind of doing the back and forth thing where it's like, I know who you are, you know who I am, we both know what's going on here. And so he tries to convince him like, alright, need to know that this kid is actually safe, because he mentions like, he didn't see anything, and Ra's is like, oh, well then he's safe. And he's like, well, I need to be sure of that so I don't, do anything to, change up the case, like hand over the blade. And of course, Alfred, being as awesome as he was super pissed and was just like, where the F is he? And he just barges right in. And then he punches Ra's straight in the face, which I thought was an awesome little moment. And Ra's, being the ninja that he is, he checked the backpack, realized the blade wasn't there, and he literally just vanished. He didn't jump out the window. I don't know what he did. He ninja'd it. He did a Batman move and he just vanished. He was gone. So they knew that they needed to find Alex and Bruce because Ra's knew that, they were still involved. He knew that they were, the answer to what he wanted. So they end up going back to the museum because, of course, Alfred pulls like the box out, which leads Jim to realize, oh, he switched something out within the museum, and that's where I need to go. So he tells Alfred to stay, he tells Harper to watch Alfred. He goes in there, and Bruce and Alex have to take off because Anubis and the other dude show up. They do the little sniffy thing where they're hiding in plain sight and hiding around corners, and then they got busted in the stupidest way possible. This always happens, it's a TV thing, but you always have it where the characters, the enemy, the villain is turning around because they no longer know where they are. It's like a horror movie trope, really, is where it's most common. But they don't know where they are, and Bruce and Alex are standing behind like this glass case. We see them through the glass, and the guys are like way down the aisle. And I was like, okay, I thought what was going to happen was Alex was going to like sneeze or something, like the thing that you just can't control. And instead, the blade just drops. And I was so confused. I was like, was he literally just standing still and he just dropped it? Like there was nothing like they were about to walk and he tripped and he dropped it and he made some noise that way, or, they turn around and they forget like, oh crap, and they bump into something. None of that. They were literally standing still and it was just like, ping, and the blade just hit the ground. I was like, he just dropped it standing still? Like, what the F was that? It made no sense to me how either of them could have possibly dropped the blade. And it was just like, cool, that just happened. The blade just dropped out of nowhere, and that was it. And I was like, they couldn't have just gone with the sneeze? That would have been way more believable. They were just standing perfectly still, and it's just like, oops. And the blade just hit the ground. I was like, okay, I guess. So, of course, they take off. That's when Bruce ends up getting a little bit of damage in. Excuse me, or I guess he gets damaged, on his leg. And then, of course, Jim comes in with the gun, saves him for a quick second. He gets thrown through the glass and he gets knocked out for a minute. Bruce, of course, tries to come in doing his young Batman thing. He's about to get choked out, and then Alex comes and saves him. He gets backhanded, so everyone's pretty much out. And then Jim ultimately ends up getting up, and Anubis comes after him, and he's ready to fight. And he picks up the bone, and he's like, "Oh, he's like an actual dog." And I could not believe it. It was the funniest thing to me. It was so crazy, but it was just perfect, like how silly they made that. Because that's one of the things with this show where it would be like the craziest thing can happen, but it's like, I totally appreciate that they did that in such a unique way. And so he knew it was like, oh, he's going after it like a dog. And he threw it out the window. And Anubis just jumps out the window and kills himself. And I was like, that's hilarious. But I actually liked it. It was just such a weirdly unique way to do it. I didn't expect the dog thing to actually come into play like that. But the fact that it actually worked just made me laugh so hard. I was like, I'm totally fine with how crazy that was. So, of course, that happens. Then he has to fight the big guy again. Picks up one of the rib bones, stabs the guy in the stomach, and then he takes him out. So everything seemingly is good. It's like, alright, killed both of them off, we're good to go, we got the blade. And that's when Ra's shows up again at the end, and that scene was incredibly well done. He has the kid, and he's talking to both Jim and Bruce. He's like, okay, gonna kill the kid, or I'm gonna get the blade. It's as simple as that. Bruce has the blade. Jim was like, alright, no big deal. Slide it on over. We get Alex. He gets the blade. It's cool. We can go home. Can't stop him right now, but save this kid's life. And Bruce is like, I can't do that because you don't understand how crucial this is. Even Bruce himself currently doesn't understand, but he knows it's so much further than what he currently comprehends that, what he already comprehends is bad enough. And if it goes beyond that, it has to almost be worth the sacrifice. And I love that scene because honestly, I had no idea what was going to happen. Like, he was like, I can't give him the blade. And with Ra's, like I mentioned, he can kind of do whatever he wants and he'll survive. It doesn't really matter. It's Ra's al Ghul. So when he was like, oh, that's okay, Bruce. He was like, you're learning and that's good. I was like, so does that mean he's happy enough to let the kid go? Because just like when he was mad with Barbara, he would just like, boom, he switched. And he was super pissed off and was like, Bruce Wayne has it. And he was just like, oh, cool, no big deal. And I thought that's what he was doing again, and I'm like, I can't really tell because he wants the blade, but also Bruce has it again, so it's just like, I don't know if he cares so much because he wants no one else to know this secret, but I don't know. So when he was like, it's good that you're learning, I was like, so is he letting him go? And he keeps going, and then he slits the kid's throat, and I was like, holy crap, he just killed this kid. And it's like, and he's continuing his lesson after he slits this kid's throat, and it's like, it's good that you're learning, but, basically the proof is in the pudding. Can you handle what you've learned? Can you handle knowing that there are sacrifices that need to be made? And that was just a crazy part, because like I said, I was honestly stuck in the middle. I was like, he could do it, but he's Ra's al Ghul. He doesn't need to really do anything. He's Ra's al Ghul. And from what we've seen, it's like, at the drop of a hat, he could be like, okay, that's not as bad as I thought it was. No big deal. I'll back off. And I just couldn't tell. But I just love that part because it was like, he was happy, but he still did it. And it was like to push that lesson even further. It was like, okay, he knows that I'm too dangerous to have that blade. And it's, as crazy as it is, it's still worthy of this sacrifice. And he just slits his throat and was like, okay, step 2 for this lesson. Is it good enough? Like, can you handle that your choice, which was, in a sense, the right choice, can you handle that choice led to this death? And it was just a great moment. I was like, wow, I did not see that coming, that he actually killed that kid. It was just like a crazy way to do it. And of course, that's, Bruce's storyline. It begins and ends with him getting this man and then ultimately his grandson killed. And it was just like, wow, that's dark. But it's one of the things with the show. Sometimes they just have a character come in and it's just like, whatever, kill anybody. So that was a great way to kind of end things out with Ra's for this episode. And in general, I thought it was definitely a great storyline with them. With him kind of going after the blade and stuff like that. And then, of course, we have our 2 other storylines. One being the new Falcone coming in. I have to remember her first name, so I'm going to call her Falcone for now. But she came in, and she had a little moment with Penguin, which was hilarious because of Victor. I don't know why they chose to make him, like, really funny this season, but I actually love it. But the part when Penguin said something, and then they both turned his ass, and he was like, I'm going to stab you. That made me laugh a lot. But she has her moment, and she's kind of used as bait by Penguin, and that was to gain his trust because she knew that she was the bait. And it was like, no big deal. Sacrifices, for the play. And I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. She played, she was playing it like, oh man, I'm so upset that you did that and you tricked me. And then when she talks to Jim, it's like, hey, it had to happen. I'm back for power and we're about to get this ball officially rolling. So that was pretty simple, but definitely cool. And then the other story dealing with Penguin, of course, was Ed made his return and his riddles kind of sunk. And I thought that was interesting. Personally speaking, I actually understood the second riddle when he said, speaking and lying and stuff like that. I was like, I said funeral home, but I guess cemetery, it's kind of in that same vein. That's just what I assumed. I didn't think of the lying down thing. I thought he actually meant lying, but, people do all sorts of things at funerals and the truth comes out and people will continue to lie about what was good or what was bad about a certain person. And I kind of thought that's what he meant. So I was on the right track. But I was like, I'm pretty sure he means like a funeral home or something because, those different emotions all come together. Granted, the way Penguin put it, it was like, yeah, he's right that it's just an insanely wide range of emotions, but I was like, if you're thinking of like one specific event or thing, I was like, that kind of makes a lot of sense to me. It just wasn't as easy, but I thought that actually made a lot of sense as a riddle, so it was kind of funny that, he couldn't figure it out, and we still don't really know what the location was for the first place, unless I guess that was supposed to be it, where Earth meets the skies, because you're buried in the ground and then you go to heaven, that sort of thing. Because the first one, I was like, I don't know what that means, but Penguin thought it was the pier, and that ended up being, not being the case, and then the second time, he just didn't get it, because it's like, these are just random emotions, period. I don't know what the F this means. So, they have this really awesome moment where Ed is like, I'm gonna kill you, and Penguin's like, you could, but only he can get revenge. The true, like the Riddler, the actual Edward Nygma could, but you are neither of those people. And that's where we get to see Mr. Freeze come back. They had a great, hilarious line from him as well, where he was like, so you want a different pose or the same pose? And Ed did exactly what he did the last time, where he's like, no, please don't. And he's like, got it, same pose. That was just a great line. I thought that was really, really funny. But Penguin decides to let him live. He was super arrogant about it too, because he was like, I'm going to let you live knowing that you're not him. And I was like, okay. That's a good revenge, is like, not killing the villain and letting them live with their loss or whatever. And then he was like, I'm going to let you live with that, but also living with the fact that you will never be him again. And I was like, that's super dumb to think that. He was just, like, he's never ever going to regain any sort of part of himself. And I was like, that's just super cocky. But if it keeps Ed in the show, I don't really care. Because I was glad that he didn't get put on ice. Because I was like, man, I really love the Riddler in this show. So even with this, like, new version of him where he's trying to figure out, his old self, I'm just glad he's not on ice, so I was happy about that. But I'm excited to see what they do with this. Definitely looking forward to the next episode. I don't know how much of the next episode is going to involve this, but that ending clip in the next episode, I have to assume, was Butch coming back to life as Solomon Grundy. So I'm hoping that they didn't put that in there, and then that's literally going to be like the last scene of next week's episode, because I'll be super upset if that's the case. But he is officially coming back as Solomon Grundy, and I cannot wait to see what they do with that. I didn't know how soon we should look forward to it, but I'm so glad it's just like 5 episodes in, they're already showing that he's back, and even if it is the last scene or the last little clip at the end of next week's episode, that still means at least in the 6th episode we will have Solomon Grundy officially in the show. So I'm super excited for that. So I hope he's a big part of the next episode for sure, especially with the way they tease it. I'm really hoping that, but either way, he's coming in. We still don't know what happened with Ivy. We still haven't gotten any sort of extra stuff with her, so we haven't seen her. We still haven't seen Tabitha. We also didn't see Selena at all this week. But a lot of characters, either changing or resurrecting right now, so there's a lot to look forward to. And I think they pretty much got everybody. Ivy's gone through her official change, even though we haven't seen it. Butch is officially back as Solomon Grundy. Barbara is just alive again, which is still kind of crazy to me that they did that. But yeah, everything's kind of coming together now. Like, all the characters are super close. We have a new Falcone in the mix. So there's a lot to look forward to. And I'm just so excited for the Solomon Grundy thing. I can't wait to see how they truly utilize that. But enjoyed this episode for sure. Ra's al Ghul was super freaking sweet. Would love to know what you guys thought about this episode in general, so please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts about it, your least favorite parts about it. And I actually want to know what you guys thought about Ra's al Ghul. I loved him in this episode. This is the first one where we really got to see him. He had his introduction, and it was really simple. He was in like the full comic outfit and everything, and it was just like, I'm Ra's al Ghul, and mystics, and this and that, and kill people and resurrect them. And it was like, okay, that's cool. That's like the simplest introduction to the Demon's Head. And this was like, this is our version of Ra's al Ghul. He's super calm. He'll go in, he'll do the tricks and lie and say, this is me. He used his real name still, but it's like, this is me and this is what I do. And he'll just go through because he can do whatever he wants. He doesn't use the League of Assassins, at least not yet. And he kind of goes in, well, mostly everybody's failed, so I guess that's why he's not using them right now. But, he goes in and he does what he needs to do, and I liked it. I loved it even. I thought it was just super cool. He's just kind of, it's a different version, because normally he's the dude in the castle. That's what Ra's al Ghul always is. He's the guy in Nanda Parbat. He's in the castle or just training with everybody else or, training them. And it's weird to kind of see him, boots on the ground. That's not normally what you see. It's not like it's never happened and I've never seen it. But you don't see it that often with Ra's al Ghul, where he's like hands-on with what needs to happen. So I love that, especially with him being such a powerful character. It makes me curious how things are going to play out like this episode. But we'd love to know what you guys thought about him in this one, especially if you're not familiar with his character too much, how you guys feel he was represented with this being like, kind of your true introduction to him. And if you're a big fan, what you thought about this version of him. And of course, what you guys thought about this whole episode in general. So please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.